Well, hello Internet, and welcome to part 6 of my Inkscape video tutorial. In this part of the tutorial, we're going to focus in 100% on the Filter Editor, which is one of the coolest tools that most people don't know about. And if you haven't seen any of the previous parts of this tutorial, I provide a link in the upper right-hand corner. And specifically, what we're going to focus in on are the Gaussian Blur, the blend effects, offset, merge, turbulence, color matrix, composite, flood, and diffuse, as well as specular lighting. But you may be asking yourself, well, why aren't you covering all of these awesome filters? Well, I actually thought it would be a little bit tedious to go through each and every one of these filters, so I provided a different solution rather than doing that. In a link in the description, what I did was I went and actually used every single filter so that you would be able to very easily cycle through every potential filter, and instead decided to focus in on the filter editor so that you'll be able to create even more really cool filters. So let's take a look at that. Alright, so here we are inside of Inkscape, and to open up the filter editor, you just go to filters and go way down here in the bottom and click on filter editor. Whenever you do that, this guy over here is going to open up on our screen. If you want to create a new filter, you just go new, and you're going to see this little box open up here. And then I'm briefly going to go through some things that you need to know to use all the different filters. Now, if you want to add an effect, what you do is you just cycle through whatever filters you want to use or options to use inside of your filter editor. And I'm just going to click on color matrix, and then I'm going to hit add effect. And you're going to see all of the different options for color matrix pop up down here. We're going to look at those in a second. But what I want to focus in on first are these guys up here, because this is a little bit confusing. Now basically what the filter editor is going to allow you to do is create custom filters using what are called filter primitives. And you're going to be able to define what parts of a graphic are going to be used as input for your filter. And you're going to do that with this guy. And basically what you do is you click right here. I'm not sure if you can see this arrow or not. And then you're going to drag this out to point to what you want to use as input. I'm going to briefly go through what each and every one of these do. Source graphic is just going to use the graphic itself as input for the filter. Source alpha, you can turn your head on its side a little bit here. If you can't see this, this is flowing downwards. Source alpha is going to use the transparency of the graphic as input for the filter. Background image is of course going to use the area under the graphic as input. Background alpha is going to use the transparency of the area under the graphic. And then fill paint and stroke paint are a little bit quirky, so we're just going to ignore those for now. As you play around with Inkscape, you're going to find out more and more that there are tons of different things that don't quite work. And in this situation, fill paint and stroke paint don't work. But eventually I'm sure they will. And whenever they do, what fill paint's going to do is use the fill of the target graphic as input, and the stroke paint is going to use the stroke of the target graphic. But before we can do any of this stuff, we have to make a little bit of a fix to our Inkscape file. If you want to use background image or background alpha as inputs for our filter, what we're going to need to do is we're going to have to find filter editor example and make a couple little changes to it inside of a text editor. So here is Inkscape Filter Editor, and I'm going to open this up in just a basic text editor, and this is really easy to make this little fix. You're going to have to find the SVG tag, and it's way at the top. You're going to have to come down here and put inside enable dash background equals new. There's a couple different ways to make this show up inside of your file, but this is the easiest. And that's all you got to do. You just have to type in this line right here before Saudi potty. That's it. And then you're done, and you're going to be able to use background images and background alpha as input for filters. So after we save that, we're going to open it back up inside of Inkscape, and here we are back inside of Inkscape. Now the Gaussian Blur, which I'm sure you probably know what it is, I'm just going to draw a rectangle inside of here. It also, not only can it be opened up inside of here, like you can see Gaussian Blur, there it is right there. You're also going to be able to find it in fill and stroke, so let's just click on this to open up fill and stroke, there it is. And to keep everything nice and neat, I'm going to drag fill and stroke down here and drop it inside of there. And this is an HD video, by the way, so if you can't see what I'm doing, just feel free to view it full screen. Now with this guy selected right here, I'm then going to go down and blur it, and there you can see the Gaussian Blur. And that's what Gaussian Blur basically does. Now also, we're going to get back to Gaussian Blur later on because it does other cool things. Let's open up Filter Editor first though. Oh, another thing you're going to see is whenever you do apply a filter to one of your objects or graphics or whatever you want to call them, it's also going to open up a filter and show you exactly how that works inside of the Filter Editor. So that's kind of cool. You want to remove something, you just right click on it, hit remove. That also applies here. Right click and remove, and it is gone. Now of course, make sure you make the change that I showed inside of a text editor before you try to do what I'm going to do right now. But we're going to take a look at another filter, which is called Blend. And to do so, I'm going to draw two rectangles. Click here, open up a rectangle, and one of them is going to be red. So let's find red down here and just click on red. And then another rectangle is going to be blue, and I'm choosing these colors because of an effect that I want to show here. And there we have those. And you can also apply filters across layers and all kinds of other different things. Now I'm going to get rid of color matrix. Let's remove that. And I'm going to go in here and I'm going to add a new effect, and that is going to be blend. There's blend. And then blend is going to allow us, we have to hit add effect first, and there's blend right there, as you can see. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend these two graphics that are on the screen with a special emphasis on the background for the image. So I want to use a source graphic and a background. So I'm going to have to come in here and drag this over to background image and drop it right there. And then I'm going to be able to come down here to this part, and I'm going to be able to change the modes. Now normal, of course, isn't going to do anything, while multiply is going to take the top object and filter out all of the light for the object underneath of it if I use multiply. So I'm going to click on multiply, come up here, and then we of course have to put a little check inside of this. And now you can see right here with the blue over top of the red that where they cross over each other, that this is going to turn black. You're going to see similar results. Let's say that we change this red to a purple, and let's change this blue to a cyan. And in that situation, you're going to see that whenever you have the purple over top of the cyan, that it's going to filter out the red and instead leave a plain blue inside of it. Let's take a look at screen, and actually let's do something a little bit cool here. I'm going to get rid of both of these rectangles like that, and I'm going to open up and create 3 ellipses. So there's one ellipse, or circles, or whatever you want to call them, and there's another one, and then I'm going to draw another one underneath of it. And let's move this down here, and this guy is going to be red, this guy is going to be blue, and this guy is going to be green. And there we go, have all those selected. And if we click on filter, you're going to see they all overlay, and they create black everywhere that they overlay. However, if I come down here and click on screen, you're going to be able to see all of the different ways that these different colors interact with each other. You can also come in here, click on darken. Again, everywhere they overlap, it's going to be black, and then lighten, and you're basically going to get a similar result to what you see with screen. So let's get rid of all those circles, and let's take a look at how we can do something kind of cool, which is to create a drop shadow sort of effect with the filter editor. So I'm going to remove that again. Then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create myself some text. So let's just say that we go hello, and let's make this a gray color. Doesn't really matter. Just did that just to create a gray color. Okay, so there we got it. Now if I want to create a drop shadow, what we're going to need is sort of a blur type effect on our text, because it's supposed to simulate a shadow. So what I'm going to do is have that selected, come over here to add effect, and I'm going to come down here to Gaussian Blur just to prove that you can use Gaussian Blur in multiple different ways. And I'm going to add that effect, and then let's say that I come down here and change this to about 6. Somewhere in that vicinity. 5.9 is close enough. And of course apply the filter, and there you can see that it blurred. I can also come in here, and instead of calling this filter, I can call this Gaussian Blur or drop shadow. Maybe drop shadow makes more sense because that's what it is. Okay, so there it is, and now it has a nice name. I'm then going to come in here for the Gaussian Blur and drag this over to source alpha so that our blur is actually black, because that makes more sense. And then of course, since this is going to be a drop shadow, we're going to have the shadow part offset from where the normal text is. And we can use another effect down here, which is offset. There's offset, and click on that and hit add effect, and you can see that offset is right here and it's linked to the Gaussian Blur, which is good. And then I'm going to come in here and just change how it offsets. So let's just put it at 7.8. I don't know, I'm just dragging them around. There we go, 8.7, that works as well. And then if I also want to show the original text as well as the drop shadow on there, that's quite easy. I just go into Add Effect again, and I'm going to merge these two different graphics, being the unedited version as well as the edited version. So click on Merge, and I'm going to hit Add Effect again. And you're going to see that it shows up right there. And then inside of Merge, I'm just going to connect this to Offset and then connect over to the source graphic like that. And now you can see that the text shows up. And let's come in here, click on this so that it shows up a little bit better. And there you can see it says hello in red letters. And there is a drop shadow over there. And if we don't like the offset, of course, we can come in here, click on Offset, come in here and increase it to whatever you want it to be. And there you can see it moved again. So that's a cool way of using a bunch of different filters to create a drop shadow. Another thing that is kind of cool, or another filter that's kind of cool, is Turbulence. And what Turbulence is used to do is to create or simulate clouds, fire, smoke, granite, a whole bunch of different things. So what we're going to do is just click on this and then go down in Turbulence, and you can see an example of it right there, and hit Add Effect. And I'm just going to do something real quick. We're just going to create a rectangle, and let's say that I want to make it gray. And then I'm going to go in and blur this guy. So I'll click on that. Actually, let's remove Turbulence first. Remove. Click on this. And let's do a Gaussian blur first. So click on that and Add Effect. And let's take this up to 6 on this. Just using 6 as an arbitrary sort of thing, as you can see, 6.2. And click on that, and there you can see that it blurred a little bit. Then I'm going to come in again, Add Effect, and this time I am going to add Turbulence. There's Turbulence. And I'm going to hit Add Effect, and there you can see that it created all sorts of craziness on the screen. Now there are tons of little different sliders on all of these different filters, and I'm going to briefly go through exactly what all these guys do. Now first off, you have base frequency, and basically what it's going to do is the higher it gets, the smaller the textures that are going to get. So let's just increase that, and you can see there they are. And as I increase them, you're going to see that the textures are indeed getting smaller. And if I bring them back down, you're going to see that they get bigger. Octaves, which is right here. The higher it gets, the sharper or more uneven our little squiggles are going to get here on our screen, as you can see. And maybe I'll click on this and make it as big as the whole entire screen. Might crash my whole entire video, but because there's a lot of math going on here. Seed is just going to change the random number that's going to be generated to create our funky little filter, as you can see right there. And then of course there is the option to either use Turbulence, which is going to create sort of a squiggly line type of look, or to use Fractal Noise, which is going to create a cloud type of look, as you can see right there. And as we continue with this tutorial, you're going to see a whole bunch of other different ways of using Turbulence, but as you can see, it sort of provides different ways to create more organic sort of looks for your design, and we're going to delete that so that it doesn't crash. And then we're going to take a look at Color Matrix after we delete all these other different filters. So let's come down here and click on Add Effect, and then click on Color Matrix right there, and then click on Add Effect, and there is Color Matrix. Now this guy confuses a lot of people, but I'm going to go through here and explain it, and hopefully it makes a lot of sense. Basically what Color Matrix allows you to do is change the colors of an image by manipulating numbers in this 5x4 matrix that you see here on the screen. And here is another representation of it. Now as you can see right here, basically the first row is going to determine how the reds in the image are going to be affected. The second row is going to determine how the greens, how the blues in the third row, and how the alpha is going to be affected for said image. And whenever I'm talking about images, I'm referring to actual pictures, not objects drawn inside of Inkscape. And then again, each column is also going to represent the color red, the color green, the color blue, and alpha or transparency. And basically the way this is going to work is if we take the first 3 numbers for the red row, for example, and then add the last number. In this situation it's a 0, but this can be a number as well. What we're going to do is be able to determine how much or how we are going to affect the red in our image. So for example, since we only have a 1 right here in this specific column in our red row, and we have a whole bunch of zeros right here. What we're basically saying with the color matrix is that we do not want to affect or enhance the red for our image. If, however, if all of these numbers right here are increased over the value of 1, that is going to intensify the red of our image. While if this does not equal 1, or it equals -1, for example, that is going to decrease the red in our image. So let's take a look at an example and clear all this up. Alright, so let's import an image. Import, and let's go and import an image. And there you can see, there's a picture of my baby at the beach. So let's go in here to the color matrix. And like I said, if it's equal to 1, that means it's not going to affect the reds at all. If, however, let's say I click down here and change this to 0.5, that's going to be a number over 1, so that is going to intensify the reds in our image. And then of course let's click up here inside of the filter, and you're going to see that since now it's equal to 1.5, that the reds have been intensified inside of our image. We can of course also intensify the greens right here. Let's change this to 0.5, as well as the blues. Let's change this to 0.5. And there you can see. And because we're increasing both the red, green, and blue, of course, those things combined equal white, and hence the color is getting brighter and brighter and brighter. A couple other funky things you can do inside of here. Let's change this guy right here to a 1. Change this to a 1, and change this to a 1. And you can see the image over here is disappearing. And you can also see exactly how we could go in and make pretty dramatic changes. Now, since this is all equal to 2, you can see the image is completely white now. If, however, I go in and change this to a -1, and change this to a -1, and change this to a -1, you're going to see that very quickly, just by changing a couple numbers inside of the color matrix, that I created a negative of the image that's on the screen. I could also sap out all of the color altogether. Let's come in here, and let's say that I wanted to make a black and white negative for some strange reason. Let's change this to 0, change this to 0, and then change this to -1, and this to -1, and now you're going to see that I have a black and white negative. So there are literally probably millions of ways to change colors using the color matrix, but that's sort of a brief sort of run through. And basically it just comes down to the idea of, if you want to intensify the reds, you make changes here. If you want to intensify it, make sure that all these numbers, when they are added up, they're greater than 1. If you want to change the greens, make sure this is greater than 1. If you want to increase the blues, make sure this is greater than 1. And of course you can also make changes to alpha, and you can also of course make it less than 1 to take the red, green, blue, or alpha out of the image. And we're going to see more examples of matrix as the tutorial continues. But as you can see, there's numerous different ways to mess around with different colors using color matrix. So let's get rid of that, and let's jump into our next effect, which is going to be Composite. Now basically what Composite's going to do for us is allow us to apply logical operations to images or to graphics on the screen. One thing that's a little bit strange, however, is that the output for this filter is going to be composited over the original. And there's a workaround with that, and we're going to use something called Flood as well as Merge, two other filters that we haven't taken a look at yet. But basically we're going to use those other two filters with Composite to make the original disappear so that only the actual filter is going to show on our screen. And how we're going to do that is we're going to click Add Effect for Composite, and then we're going to come in here and we're going to be applying this on the source as well as the background. So go and drag this guy over there and drop it on there. We are then going to call for Flood, which is just going to flood a white sort of image between the original and the new filter. Just come down here, click on Flood, click on Add Effect, and then we're going to come down here, and like I said, we want it to disappear, so we're going to click on this guy for the flood color, and then we're going to come down here and make sure that this is white, which it is, and hit OK. And we're going to be making these changes onto rectangles again, just to keep everything simple. And let's say that this first one is red, and let's say that this second one is blue, and there they are. And then what we're going to need to do is merge our composite with our flood, so that means we're going to need a filter down here called Merge. Click on that. hit add effect, and then we're going to drag this up here and point that towards the flood, and then we're going to drag this second one up here and point it towards our composite. And now that we have it all set up, we're going to be able to come in here to composite and actually demonstrate exactly how these work. Let's highlight this, click on that, and then I'm going to cycle through it. Default, of course, is going to do nothing. In is just going to show exactly where these two objects intersect, as you can see right there. Out is going to show everything except where they intersect. And what I mean, I'm basically just clicking on this. See, there's in and out. Atop is going to also show where they intersect. Exclusive OR is going to show everything except where they intersect as well. And then arithmetic is extremely cool. Basically what it's going to allow us to do is define what shows based off of how we change these sliders down here in regards to our two graphics on the screen. And I'm just going to leave that the way it is and get more into that here in a second to show you a really cool effect. And basically, I'm going to show you that by getting rid of this, and I'm going to show you how to do really cool lighting effects. And basically, the lighting effects are just going to be used just as you would think. They're just going to make things look more 3D. So we're just going to put a star here on our screen and just give it a weird sort of funky color and enlarge it so I'm positive you're going to be able to see it. And basically what you need to do whenever you are using different lighting effects is you need to generate what are called height maps. And basically what a height map is going to be used for is to simulate a 3D type effect on your screen. And basically the transparent part of the height map is going to be the lowest level, while the most opaque is going to be the highest level. And I'll just demonstrate it because it is a lot easier to understand whenever we do this. We're going to use a Gaussian blur in this situation to generate our height map. So let's just come in here and go Gaussian blur and hit add effect. And I'm going to take the Gaussian blur up to 6 because I like to. 6.2, whatever, as you can see right there. Then I'm going to use the diffuse lighting effect. Click on that, hit add effect, and you're going to see that it put a great big giant black square on the screen, but we're going to handle that in a second. Then going to come in here to all of these different options that we have available. I'm going to change my light source to distant light in this situation, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's going to simulate a light that's in the distance. Then with surface, I'm going to be able to define the height of my peaks, and let's say that I want this to be, I don't know, 10.5. You can also come in here, you don't have to use the sliders, of course. Constant's going to be the strength of the light, so let's just say that we want this to be 2. And I'm just going to go in here and put 2. Light source, of course, like I said before, kernel unit length doesn't really work right, so don't worry about that. And then azimuth is going to define the direction or angle for our light source on an XY sort of plane. I'm going to change this to 220. And then elevation, of course, is going to define the direction of our light on the YZ plane. So let's change that to 25. And then you can see that the lighting is starting to show. However, because we have two different things going on our screen at the same time, we have to block out this top filter and only show what we want to show. And that is where Composite's going to come in. Remember I said we're going to use Composite again? So let's go in here to add effect. And we're also, of course, going to be using arithmetic, which I referred to before. Click on Composite, hit add effect, and there you can see. Now it's starting to look a little bit more like what we want it to look like. The composite, the first one, is going to point at my diffuse light, just as it is. And then the second arrow is going to point to our source graphic, just like that. Then what we're going to be able to do, come down here, click on arithmetic, and you're going to see why arithmetic is really cool. Now what I'm going to be able to do inside of this with the arithmetic is to enhance and define that I want to show only parts of the different graphics. So of course what I want to do is only show the highlighted part for the diffused light on top of my original star. Now how I'm going to do this is come down inside of here, and if you actually drift your mouse over top of these, it's going to show you the funky sort of formula that's going to be used, but I'm going to try to simplify exactly what's going on here. Now K1 is going to intensify both the first graphic as well as the second new filter that I have on the screen. So in most situations, I'm not going to want to play around with this slider whenever I'm trying to lessen the intensity of the filter over the original graphic that I'm working with inside of here. So what I'm going to do first is jump down into K2, which is going to allow me to play around with the first input color. Now, I don't really want to do anything to the original graphic, so I'm going to leave that as 0. And then I'm going to take a look at K3, which is going to allow me to change the filter that is on top. So let's zoom out, and I'm going to play around with this filter that I have down here. And as you can see, as I am moving it up, it is showing more and more of the original graphic here on our screen. Let's zoom in here and let's change this to 0.6. And there you can see is the original graphic. Now if I want to intensify them all together, I come in here to this guy right here, and let's say that I just increase this to 1 and see what happens. Boom. Now you can see 3D star. And of course I can come in here then and jump into diffuse light and change the surface scale, or I can change this azimuth and play around and make it look more or less 3D. So of course, to really learn this stuff, you're going to have to go in and play around with it. And I'm very quickly going to shoot in here and show you what specular lighting does, which is basically the same type of thing. So let's just come in here, let's remove this. The difference between diffuse light is it's used for more matte surfaces like bricks or paper or whatever and simulating 3D on them. Specular lighting, on the other hand, is going to create more of a rubbery type of look. So I'm going to use the same star, just like I used before. And I'm very quickly going to go through here and do this again. So add effect, in this situation, I'm going to go Gaussian Blur. There we go, add effect. Change this to 6. So I threw a Gaussian blur inside of there. Going to come inside and I'm going to do specular lighting. Like I said, it's going to create a rubber texture. Click add effect. There that is. I'm then going to come down here to surface scale. I'm going to change this to 10. I'm going to change my constant to 2. Exponent, which is a brand new one. This is going to define how shiny it's going to be. I'm going to change that to 25. I'm going to also use distant light. You can check out point light and also spotlight on your own just for fun. Kernel unit, remember, doesn't do anything. Azimuth, I'm going to change this to 230. Like I said before, it's going to define the direction or angle of our light source on an XY plane. And elevation, I'm going to change this to 45. And once again, that's going to define on the Z plane. And there you can see it's starting to show up. Anytime you see this and you're like, hey, wait a minute, it's not showing exactly what I want. What's that mean? That means we need composite. Go in here, click on composite, which is right there. Come down here and hit add effect. There we go. In this situation, I'm going to grab this, point to my source instead, and then the second one, I'm going to leave that be pointing to the specular lighting. And there you can see it's starting to look a little bit more like what I want. And then I'm going to come down here and go to arithmetic to define what I want to show and what I don't want to show out of there. And in this situation, I'm going to change this to 1 and change this to 1. And there you can see it has sort of a rubberized type of texture. However, it's still showing this gray back here, and I don't like that. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to use composite and get rid of that gray. So add effect, I'm going to click add effect again. And then in this situation, whenever you're trying to get rid of the weird effects of the filter, you're going to have the first one be pointing towards the very last thing in the list, and then this arrow is going to be pointing towards the surface or the source. And then with this special composite, I'm not going to use arithmetic, but I'm instead going to use in, and what in's going to do is show the parts of the top that are in the bottom image. And now you can see there is my 3D rubberized star. So that was a whole bunch of different things you can do with the filter editor inside of Inkscape. Please leave your questions and comments below. Otherwise, till next time.